Back when I first began to explore and discover gem carving in America, where there is little to no history of the craft of gem cutting, unlike Europe and Asia, there existed no school or master where one could study and learn this craft. Of course, one could learn faceting and cabochon cutting from a gem and mineral society club, but I was not interested in this, and it held no fascination for me at the time. There were gem cutting houses in New York, but for the most part held very secretly within a family that had migrated from Europe in the late 19th and early 20th century. There was no opportunity to learn from a master of the craft I so enthusiastically wanted to delve into. Venturing into the field of gem carving was a new horizon and an uncharted medium of art I knew nothing about. I knew at the time there was nobody to turn to, even for answers to simple questions about equipment and tools. Eventually, I stumbled into this field by sheer fate and luck. It was not my karma to be born into a family of jewelry, and I had no real knowledge of or understanding of field gemology and the medium of gem art. As a teenager and young man, I was an artist who explored the many mediums of art from oil painting, sculpture, photography, and graphic arts. Gemstones and jewelry held no particular draw at the time. I didn't simply want to know how to cut a cabochon. I wanted to know how to carve and sculpt a gemstone, given my background of being more of a fine artist. Looking around in America for a teacher would be fruitless because there was almost no tradition, and to those that knew were not at all interested in teaching unless you were a family member. So I went out and bought my first lapidary equipment and began to experiment and explore the art. My initial purchase included a saw, a 6-inch cabbing machine, and a flexible shaft handpiece, and thus my gemstone carving began. Looking back now, they were crude tools, but were the only ones offered for sale. Plus, I didn't have a clue which were the best tools anyway. I was flying outside the box in a medium that I had not a clue as to what the boundaries were. Later in this book, I will focus on the equipment and tools used in a modern gem artist's studio. But this is a world apart from where I started. Because I was without a teacher for the first 10 years, I had no idea what one could or should do with a gemstone. I was functioning in a complete bubble, an uncharted world of artist exploration. Looking back, I can see in many ways this was a gift. It gave me complete freedom to create without the confines of age-old apprenticeship traditions handed down from generation to generation. There is this fine line for me when I learn a skill that's been in use for several generations and breaking outside the box and looking for a completely unique and new way of approaching a technique. Just because it's been done one way does not often mean there's not a better way. I believe there is a fine line in taking in what has been, maximizing the knowledge, but always remaining open and humble to the possibility there's a better way. Example, quicker execution time, better technique, or a superior water clear polish. To this day, I am always learning something new in my field of expertise. My principle here is stay open to new ideas and be willing to change. As I began my exploration into this unique and unknown art form, I had no restrictions on what I could do or could not do with gemstone material. I thus began to teach myself, stepping into a completely uncharted territory. I would dream an image, go to work with my rotary handpiece, and carve away. The hardest technique I had to learn on my own was getting that water clear polish. Essential for turning any gemstone into a true gem, polish is everything. This took me years to perfect. A side story I need to share to further elaborate this is as follows. It was 10 years into my career when I first went to Adar Oberstein, Germany, to meet the fabled land of gem art and the living masters after working within a bubble of isolation for many years, self-teaching, experimenting, and totally free for self-creative exploration. The first group of master cutters I met in Adar Oberstein in 1986 couldn't believe I had cut and polished the stones on my own without a teacher. Plus they would say, "How do you get your polish?" Later in the book, I will share more about my travels to and the subsequent years in Adar as an outsider who was allowed in past the closed studio doors to work alongside several living masters of the craft. I have a very strong philosophy as an artist that if it has been done before, I am not interested in doing it. I have followed this quote throughout my whole professional artist career. If it has been done before, it is not art. Inspiration alone belongs altogether to the individual. Everything else, including skill, now can be acquired by anyone. Inspiration remains the only factor in the creation of a successful work of art that cannot be copied or imitated. Quoted by Clement Greenberg. Copying for me has never been art, but simply studying and learning techniques of another master. Once I learned the techniques from studying another's artistry, then finding my own original design is the zenith for me becoming a true master of my craft. What is truly difficult, and I believe I owed my success to, is out of one's imagination of originality and beauty there can emerge inspiration that others can feel and be inspired by. I stumbled into the field where I had no rules that I had to follow or no craftsman guild that closely guarded the art. It was a wide open art form where I taught myself the craft. I learned my craft in an isolated world for the first 10 years. The techniques I developed and styles I created were simply a process of trial and error on my own. You might say I paid for my education in the early days by my mistakes and loss of precious material. Living and creating in a vacuum meant I could do whatever I wanted and come up with techniques that were and are completely novel to the craft even to this day. Having been self-taught also meant I could do things in gem material that had not been explored before. I have a very strong philosophy that whatever I create should be completely novel and unique to the field of gem artistry. This is how, after almost 40 years in the field, I have come to be known as one who creates gem art outside the box. One of my drives is to constantly create and think outside the box. Sometimes it can appear that no one understands where one is coming from, but eventually the physical world just needs to catch up with one's ideas or thinking because one is just ahead of his or her time. I often refer to this as the jet lag of life effect. It's possible that when one feels out of place or misunderstood, it can mean you are just ahead of the curve and the rest around you need to catch up with a new model or way to live. To me, this can reflect that one is thinking outside the box. One has just moved their sense of reality to a whole new level and dimension, helping in small or large ways and having lasting impact on humanity, a never-ending and constant evolution of life on this planet that has moved humanity forward in beliefs and attitudes as to what it means to be human. The real beauty for me now, after 40 years as a gem artist, as I have never tired of or lost my passion to create with gemstones. From the date I cut my first gemstone so many years ago until today, I still get that wow factor after I finish a polish on a gemstone that I've cut and created. To me, this is the very essence of being bathed in my muse, the awe and wonder of beauty and creativity flowing effortlessly through me. I have the same passion and drive today since the very first day of cutting. I just can't wait to see what lies ahead in my creative expression. I feel like after 40 years, I have just hit my stride and feel my best work lies ahead of me. Oh,